are live. My name is John Paul Berg, and this is The Way Forward, a weekly podcast regarding Douglas social credit and monetary reform. So today we have a theme, basically a question, and we're going to kind of frame the conversation around this. How can we have a moral society when money is elevated to the place of God? So, I mean, this comes up frequently with Douglas social credit specifically, where it illustrates this, like it's an immoral system because money takes a precedence. I actually watched a video recently with an Orthodox priest, and he explained something that's very obvious when you hear it, but I don't think a lot of people realize this. We live in a society presently where a mother will have a baby and have a brief maternity leave, and then they kind of outsource the child rearing, and then they because the emphasis is putting on going back to work. So I mean, we kind of outsource the most important roles we play in life, in existence, so we can get back to debt slavery, essentially, to being wage slaves. So that's where we're going to frame it. We're going to talk around it. We'll take it where it goes. So with that said, I'll throw it right over to you, Dr. Oliver. What are your thoughts on this theme, this topic?
Well, I was thinking about this during the afternoon, and I was thinking perhaps the easiest way to get people to understand this is to look at the financial system as a big problem, reaction, solution dynamic, right? So it follows the same basic pattern because the system as it's designed, it distributes income that is not automatically sufficient to offset the costs and prices of what's simultaneously being produced. So, and that's the problem, right? The gap, the lack of consumer buying power in the economy. People naturally, and the economy as a whole, demand that something be done. We have, this is a problem. We have to find a solution. So that's the reaction, right? There's a need for more money that's got to be obtained from some source. And the system, the financial system, particularly the banking system that was complicit in generating the problem, offers a solution. It can create more debt money, and through government deficit financing, business expansion, and of course consumer loans, lines of credit, credit cards, student loans, mortgages, etc. It can provide the extra credit that's necessary so that people can access the surplus production and retailers can meet their costs. But for all intents and purposes, we live in a debt money system. So the only way the existing system can fill it is with more debt, and they're not going to do it for free. In fact, the system is designed in such a way that they will seek to maximize their profit in various ways. So in other words, yes, they can alleviate it, but they'll only alleviate it in the form of debt, and they'll do so under terms that best suit their own interests. So that means we're basically living under a system of reward and punishment. If you do choose those actions that are most beneficial to the system's administrators, then you will be rewarded. Maybe you'll get credit on better conditions, or you'll have a smaller interest rate, etc., etc., etc. If you don't play ball, then you get punished. So what this means is that under the system that we have, money, it's artificially limited, and because it's artificially limited, it becomes more important than it ought to be. It becomes more important than the goods and services it's supposed to represent. It becomes actually the determining factor, right? So built right into the system, because of the way the mechanism is structured, we basically are forced or heavily pressured to make money, the acquisition of money, under conditions where money is artificially scarce, the most important thing in life. It's sort of the guiding principle, the animating principle of the whole economy, and indeed the whole society. So that's what the existing financial system does. It imposes a whole metaphysics on us. And as a result, it's not inaccurate to say that money has become kind of like a religion. It's become the controlling, determining, parameterizing element. And if you want to be successful, quote unquote, under the terms set by the system, then you have to worship at the altar of Mammon.
So by its very nature, it's essentially elevated, like by this perpetual state of scarcity that is artificial. A lot of people don't understand that relative to how hyper normalized this is.
Mm.
Like the scarcity is just it's embedded. People just accept it at face value, and they never really contemplate that. And that is the animating force. That's what I say. That's kind of what fuels the labor colony, is this perpetual state of scarcity that we're in. So Andre, I'll throw it over to you. What are your thoughts on the general theme?
Oliver is right. It's embedded in the system, the value, the money, or the idea of money. Could you bring the quote that I want to read for our viewers? I'm writing an article. The title is "The Poesis of Artificial Intelligence," and I'm referring to one book of Oliver, Life of Our Own. So I will read the text and the quote from the book of Oliver. The most compelling example of totalitarian control that has concealed its hegemony since the 16th century to be the monstrous banking monopoly, coupled with the willful blindness of individuals. All along the ladder of power stand individuals of institutional mediocrity. We see it everywhere. Dr. Oliver Heydorn, in his book entitled Lives of Our Own, describes how institutions are themselves organized to drive individuals toward crime. According to Dr. Heydorn, moral sense is not merely an individual value, but must also be part of the community and therefore are of association and institution. So every ostensibly democratic society engage in public policy debates and must make public policy decision. Since nature abhors a vacuum, choices of this kind simply cannot be avoided. Either the policies that are eventually imposed will promote or facilitate the achievement of a socially just economic system, or there will be embodied social injustice of various sorts. This ineluctable fact serves to demonstrate beyond peradventure that there is a communal dimension to morality, and hence there is a public dimension to the question of social justice. It's not simply a matter of individual actions and choice, end quote. Thus, the failure to embed moral value within the institution reduces economic actor to the status of quote unquote accomplice in crime. They are no longer simply incompetent. They are also well aware of the crime perpetrated daily because these moral offenses are intrinsic to the system in which they operate. Yet they seem to completely ignore or feign ignorance of the civilizational crisis we are experiencing. The reflex of any bureaucracy is therefore to turn a deaf ear to any criticism or complaint, or to turn a blind eye. I was just doing my job to endemic, systemic, and organized corruption. Oliver mentioned it. It's embedded in the system. Be reward, or be punished. And the fact that money has become the most important concept in our life, all our mindset is turned toward this. I've been saying this since many years. There's a spiritual war behind that, but it is hidden because most people, they will focus on the economic problem. And this, I think Douglas, I don't say he wanted to avoid it. He was trying to be very careful, because when we look at the Christian doctrine, they're very, very close. And I think at the time, Douglas wanted to be neutral in the sense that he was, as an engineer, he was studying the flaws in the system. But also, I think you recognize that without moral value, without spiritual guidance in our life, we will eventually fall back on mammon, on money. This is where we're standing now, and I'm not sure there's a lot of people who are ready to go and ask themselves this type of question. I do it, and honestly, I don't have an answer except maybe how do we restore the value of God in the life of people.
So it's interesting because you gentlemen have probably heard me say it. I say it so frequently. One thing that people are seemingly illiterate of these days is there's an economic illiteracy and there's a philosophical illiteracy. And in the secular West, like in secular modernity, we don't even understand morality. Like secular people don't have a comprehension of morality. It has to have an ontological foundation or be instantiated in a metaphysic. It has to be inalterable. That's morals. Morals derive from religion, essentially. So that's something that a lot of people just they have lazy thinking on it. They perceive morality as being a consensus when that's inaccurate. When we rely on consensus, then we could be manipulated because the mob is definitely very unruly. So I mean, you just look at some of the wrong turns we made historically. It's predicated on that. So I mean, it's an interesting topic because we're tackling kind of both ends of what people are seemingly most illiterate regarding. So with that said, it's crucial that we get this message out. So we have about 60 people watching. It's a great segue for me to appeal to you guys. If you could please share the stream, it's very advantageous for us. So with that said, Dr. Oliver, I will throw it over to you.
Well, I think, it's important for people to realize that there is an objective morality, and this concept is something which I think if it's properly understood, it goes right back to the Persian prophet Zoroaster or Zarathustra, because one of the things that Zoroaster talks about is this notion of asha, which is translated as truth. And the idea there is that reality, this reality that we live in, is constructed in such a way that it basically has two modes. And the modes are dependent on the knowledge and the free choice of conscious agents. So if we arrange, let's say, certain elements in a certain constellation, we'll get a good outcome. And if we arrange those same elements in another constellation, or no particular constellation, we'll get a bad outcome. Right? And this is a pattern that is observable in all activities that humans engage in. So one of the examples I like to use is that of, let's say, the airplane. Right? We are capable of designing flying vehicles that can transport people from one continent to another in a few hours, safely most of the time. And this is something which our ancestors would have looked at and regarded as akin to magic or something miraculous. How is this possible? Well, it's only possible because we have discerned the natural laws that govern flight, the principles of aerodynamics. And we have applied these principles through appropriate mechanisms. So, what Zoroaster was getting at is that there is this layer of principles, of laws that exist in every field of endeavor and in every activity. And if we want to be successful in anything we do, we have to discern what are the natural laws that govern this activity. And we've got to find ways of applying it effectively and efficiently. So it's the same thing with health. If you want to be healthy, you've got to discern what the natural law requires in terms of diet, lifestyle, etc. And to the best of your ability, you've got to, if you like, obey the natural law. You've got to act in conformity with it. it's of no use to say, I don't care what the natural law has to say about health, or I don't care what the principles of aerodynamics are. I'm going to build the plane the way I think it should be built, or according to the principles that I arbitrarily draw up in my own head. You can do that, but the plane is not going to fly, right? So these laws, these principles that govern activity in terms of, success, these are independent of human opinions, human perceptions, etc. And when it comes to designing a financial system and an economy, the same basic notion applies. What does the natural law require of a fully functional financial system? And Douglas says that, well, one of the principles of a properly functioning financial system is that it's got to accurately reflect the physical economic reality. It's got to be an honest system. So on the level of production, if we have on the one hand, a desire for some set of goods and services, and we have the raw material, the labor, the tech know-how, the real capital to produce the goods and services that will answer to those needs, then if the financial system reflected reality, the money would be forthcoming, right? The money would just be a neutral tool, a facilitator, a catalyst that enables us to do what's possible. It shouldn't be the limiting factor. It shouldn't be the determining factor. And the same thing is true when it comes to consumption. If we produce $100 million worth of goods and services in the course of the year, then the system, if it were an honest system, if it reflected reality accurately, it should distribute $100 million in income to consumers automatically. And what Douglas said was the present system, because it doesn't respect natural law, or only respects natural law imperfectly, it's not giving us enough income automatically to buy back in full what we've produced. It's only giving us a portion, maybe 60 million. And the only way we can fill that is to borrow from the system, as individuals or collectively, the additional purchasing power that we need. But if the system were designed in keeping with natural law, whatever we've paid for, so to speak, in physical terms, if something exists, well, we've handed over the raw material, we've handed over the labor, we've used up the real capital. So it exists, it's been paid for in physical terms. If the financial system reflected reality, we should be capable of paying for it in full in financial terms without this necessity of having to borrow, right? So the present system basically doesn't allow us to buy back in full what we've produced without borrowing. And when you have to borrow to pay a debt, you're not liquidating the debt, right? You're just carrying it over. And this is the core factor that makes money under the current system master rather than servant. And that's why money has come to occupy a place that it doesn't deserve, and can only corrode and pervert everything else that it comes into contact with. So yes, I mean, it may very well be even that the perversion, the corrosion implicit in the money system, the dishonesty of the money system, which governs their everyday life, is perhaps one of the things that has disconnected people from the reality of objective morality, because it doesn't embody the natural law.
Yeah, it's a great analogy for sure. And it's a lot of people don't understand it. Like the whole premise of the Douglas analysis was that we don't have a self-liquidating system. There's a deficiency. And this deficiency is kind of a bug. That's how he interprets it. But essentially it's utilized as a feature by international finance, because this is what perpetuates that scarcity we were referencing initially. And the scarcity model is what obscures morality. So, I mean, this is where we are. And so many people, again, like we gotta kind of break their presuppositions about the normalizing of this system. This system is just wrong by its very nature. I was blind to this. I really was. I was in that false binary of capitalism and socialism. And like, that's they parameterize the view of economics within that tight binary. And I mean, I was totally oblivious to some of the broader mechanisms of this system. And that's what I find personally so profound about Douglas social credit is it addresses the core causational aspect of most of our societal ills presently. What are your thoughts, Andre?
The example or the metaphor used by Oliver made me smile because I'm reading actually Social Dynamic from Eric D. Butler, and he's referring to the plane, the metaphor of the plane. And I'm also reading the book of Oliver, Life of Our Own. And in his book, he's referring to the plane, and he's saying, he's talking about communists, or people that are calling other people extremists. And we hear this a lot today. Those are extremist people. And let me just quote a small part of the book of Butler, because he's referring to the plane. And he says, quote, "Those who insist that there are unchanging absolutes which can only be ignored at great danger are often charged with being extremists," quote unquote. The original dictionary meaning of extremism is the taking of painstaking care. All those who travel in aeroplanes feel much more at ease when they realize that extremists have built their plane, end quote. I smiled because you have engineer, for example, and this refers to Douglas. Douglas was an engineer. He was studying the system, the monetary system, with an engineer, the mind of an engineer. So he was based his diagnosis on fact, not on feeling or relativism. What we are experiencing today. My truth is better than your truth. It's completely false, because you have only one truth, and it is where we're tending toward the truth. We don't know it. If God would unveil the truth to us, we would become blind completely tomorrow, because we are not ready, because the system does not permit us to be free. We were talking last week about beauty, and I will say we can add also kindness. We are in a system where when money is scarce, you cannot be kind. You have to fight. You have to compete with other people. And it was, I will end on this, the famous quote from Carney: "If you're not at the table, you're on the menu." They're eating us alive, and we have to react. And many people, they are starting to feel it. They did not feel it because, for example, the national debt, it is not tangible. They cannot feel it, but they can feel when they cannot pay their grocery, or they cannot pay their bill, and they have to borrow or pay with their credit card. They can feel it. They can start to feel this fake scarcity.
So with that said, we have about 120 people watching. I hate to continuously interrupt with this, but it's the only way we get any reach. If I could appeal to you to please share the stream, it helps us immensely. And I'll even push it a little farther. If you know anyone that you think would enjoy this type of content, send them the link. Again, it's the only hope we have of reaching people with our message, which we feel has merit. So please consider that. With that said, we actually have a video queued up. If you go to YouTube and you type in Douglas Social Credit, the very first thing that comes up is a series of animated clips. And if you're actually curious about learning the mechanistics of this system, this is a great resource. So we will definitely appeal to you to do that as well. So with that said, I'm going to play a video in one moment here. This is Social Credit and Christianity, and then we will discuss it briefly.
Episode 29, Social Credit and Christianity. We are sometimes told that Christianity is a religion that is exclusively concerned with the transcendental, i.e., with the four last things: death, judgment, heaven, and hell. But what if that isn't true? According to both the social credit philosophy of Major C.H. Douglas, not to be confused with Chinese social credit, and the teachings of the Church, True Christianity, while retaining this ultimate reference to the world to come, is essentially incarnational in nature. The second doctrine of Christianity is the doctrine of the Incarnation. Jesus Christ, the second person of the Trinity, took on human nature and became man. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt amongst us. Accordingly, it is part of the mission of Christ and of his church to elevate the created world, to transform it, to restore it, to bring the world back into harmony with the divine. This is achieved primarily through the metanoia, moral conversion, and spiritual rebirth of the individual human being. But it also includes the remaking of institutions, of laws, and of society itself. For the institutions and laws under which we live, move, and have our being are either in conformity with the Word, conceived of as the natural law, or what Douglas called the canon, or else they deviate from that law and can even stand in flagrant violation of it. If we want the truth of the natural law, of the divine blueprint, to find its concrete embodiment in the real world, we must discover that law and then obey it and apply it through appropriate mechanisms. The reward for doing so is the enjoyment of the fullness of being. As it says in the Gospel, the truth shall make you free. So how do we arrange financial and economic matters so that the Word might become flesh in these dimensions of our social life? Simple. We must base the economy on an honest financial system. Such a system would accurately reflect our potential to create wealth as well as the flow of actual wealth. The provision of accurate information would then allow the economy to function effectively, efficiently, and fairly in fulfillment of its true purpose. This is the promise of a Douglas social credit monetary reform, the coming of a kingdom of increasing abundance, security, freedom, and leisure, via the application of Christian principles to economic life. Poverty in the midst of plenty, civility in place of freedom, misdirection, instability, waste, and sabotage would all fall away. This would make it a lot easier to fulfill the gospel injunctions to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, care for the sick, and so forth. Now, at this stage, social creditors might be accused of attempting to immanentize the eschaton, of trying to create heaven on earth by purely human means. Not so. We are not aiming to achieve a mathematically perfect world through the implementation of Douglas social credit, but merely a healthy world, a more functional world. It is a strict Christian obligation to hunger and thirst for this type of righteousness also. Indeed, the gospel makes it clear that it is, above all, the realm of finance that must be brought under the law of God. For if Satan is the prince of this world, it is very largely through the oligarchic financial system that he rules. Consider the following references to the money question in the New Testament. 1. In the Sermon on the Mount, Christ highlights an inescapable choice. We cannot serve both God and mammon. We will invariably love the one and hate the other. This is true not only for individuals, but for society and its systems. The current financial system enthrones mammon as society's god, and the result is dishonesty, injustice, and dysfunction. Douglas social credit, by making finance honest, seeks to relieve us of the injustice and the dysfunction so that we might be free to serve God instead. 2. To underscore the centrality of the money question by means of concrete actions. Christ's only act of recorded violence was throwing the money changers out of the temple after his triumphal arrival in Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. A few days later, after Judas's betrayal was secured in exchange for 30 pieces of silver, he was crucified for it. 3. St. Paul sums up the message of Christianity with respect to money when he writes, "The love of money is the root of all evil." Well, just consider, we have a whole economic and social order, a whole civilization in fact, which is based on the love of money. Is it any wonder that things are falling apart and that the center cannot hold? by putting money in its proper place as a servant, by making finance structurally honest, social credit turns out to be the single greatest secular force in favor of practical Christianity. While social credit is necessary for the full realization of a Christian social order, it is not necessary, of course, to be a believing or practicing Christian in order to be a social creditor. Social credit is based on natural reason and natural experience and is thereby accessible to all. Indeed, Douglas did not start out with his examination of the economy from a Christian lens, but from an engineering lens. It was only after the fact that he drew the vital connection between social credit and Christianity. This animated series was sponsored by the Clifford Hugh Douglas Institute for the Study and Promotion of Social Credit. For more information on Douglas Social Credit, please visit socred.org or socialcredit.com.au.
So I think that's really important to put emphasis on that, as the video did in the end. As much as this is in line with a Catholic social doctrine, in line with Christianity in general, it's not reliant on it. It doesn't come from that. This stands on its own merit as an economic system. So it should be like everybody should be. I frequently say lately, I think I got this from you, Oliver, that there would be tens of millions of Douglas social creditors if people only knew what it was. But I also think this message is crucial now because I see a lot of people in the Christian realm talking about socialism. There was actually a guest on Tucker Carlson, who has one of the biggest podcasts in the world recently, that said a Christian system is a socialist system. And Douglas social credit is not socialist. It's anti-socialist. It's anti-collectivist by its very nature. It's true liberty in that way. So with that said, do you want to jump off on that, Dr. Oliver, and maybe speak to that a little bit just to differentiate the two?
Yeah. So, socialism, as it's generally understood, seems to imply state direction or government direction of the economy, significant redistribution from the rich to the not so rich, the poor. Douglas social credit, the economic model which Douglas proposed, is basically free enterprise, so private property, the market mechanism, the profit motive, plus an honest financial system that would distribute purchasing power in the form of a dividend and a discount to all citizens, because we are all rightfully regarded as shareholders in our economies. And if there's this gap, if the financial system does not provide enough income to the community considered as an aggregate to offset the costs of what's being produced, then there's a need to distribute the surplus in a way that basically could be regarded as a kind of profit, right? So, I'm always a bit leery about these terms, socialism, capitalism, etc., because they can mean so many different things to different people. But one way of conceiving social credit, if we're careful about the meaning of the word capitalism, is to say that it's the universalization of capitalism, in the sense that the national dividend is a profit distribution mechanism, where dividend is a capitalist term. If we're all owners in society, then we're all going to draw a dividend, and that dividend is not financed through redistributive taxation or any other form of redistribution. It's the fresh creation of money, free of debt, to offset this imbalance in the price system between incomes on the one hand and costs and prices on the other. So I would say that if we had a Douglas social credit system in place, government would be much smaller, much less powerful, taxes would be much lower, because a lot of the growth in the power of government, a lot of growth in taxation, is directly connected with the need for government deficit financing as one of the ways of bridging the gap. That's one of the ways that the present system attempts to bridge the gap, because the gap has to be bridged somehow, or we'll have recession, depression, or total collapse. So it's because we have failed to fill the gap in the way that Douglas prescribed, that government has grown and grown and grown in size. You've got to have a welfare bureaucracy. You've got to have unemployment insurance, just for the sake of social stability. Now, when you have all of that, you're going to finance it through conventional means, well, then you have to have a huge tax bureaucracy. So all these things go together. And part of the reason we're in the situation we're in is that we've become so reliant on socialist measures to help manage the gap, when socialist measures are not really necessary. And in fact, we could, if we did the social credit route, if we took the social credit route, they would be revealed as redundant.
Yeah, I like that. It's essentially it's enfranchising the citizen is what it's doing in a way that's very revolutionary. Not a revolution, but revolutionary. And it changes fundamentals regarding our society. It just makes for a better world. And it's the best of both worlds. It's like I was alluding to earlier. I was stuck in the parameters of capitalism versus socialism. I thought I had to accept some of the inherent flaws of capitalism because there was only one alternative, and that was socialism. So finding this, it was a game changer for me. And it's like you pointed out, and I reference frequently, but I can't perceive the world in the same way after learning of this system. It's that transformative in the way you're framing the problem. And in my estimation, it's more accurate. So if you want, Andre, to jump on there and add your 2 cents.
2 cents, yes, maybe 1 cent. One remark that you were talking about Tucker Carlson and associating Christianity with socialism. If you go and see the etymology of the word Catholicism, it means universality. So it has to be one law for everybody. We always say that in a democratic society, everybody is above the law. That's the first thing. In the small clip, you see the small stone at the top of the pyramid that is crushing the rest of the economy, or the rest of human life. So a small system with a very few individual control everything, our life, our way of thinking also, because many people, they will just associate either they will prefer socialism or capitalism, but it's 2 sides of the same coin. And the coin is money. Money is worth nothing if you don't have the means of production, if you don't have the will of people, the knowledge, the know-how. It's based on discovery, heritage. And I think when Oliver is mentioning the dividend, heritage is also very important. Past discoveries, we're benefiting from them today, but only a few people are benefiting from them. The rest of us, we never benefit from it, or we have to pay for it. And pay soon. It will be, you'll have to pay for water. This is the last stage of capitalism. And they always try to say, okay, well, because it's the last stage and it is not working, we will change it and do a revolution and use socialism. Well, it was already tried. It did not work. You had tens of millions of people that died because of it. So I challenge any economist to come here and say, okay, can we analyze the system of Douglas in a rational manner? A lot of people, they use feeling. They don't use fact. Thank God I'm not an economist.
I think socialism we can all acknowledge, and there's great examples to point to historically, like the communist model, like socialism, it failed. And I mean, it was the whole time it was being implemented, they had to impose authoritarian measures just to keep people in these systems. That's how bad people want it to get out. But with that said, with acknowledging that, you have to acknowledge presently we're at a failing stage of capitalism. This is not capitalism. It's nothing resembling it. To say crony capitalism would be very polite or generous. It's neo-feudalism. It's that bad. The middle class is going away. The commodification of everything, like you were saying, like water. Soon it'll be an oxygen tax. I mean, we kind of see that with the carbon taxation. But it's clearly we need something different. And in my estimation, the powers that be, international finance, they want to push us under this central bank digital currency socialism model. And when we say socialism and capitalism are the same thing, I think using the Lord of the Rings allegory to say it's just someone else putting on the ring of power, which is the monopoly on credit creation. So we're still being tyrannized. Do you want to be tyrannized in a communist system by a dictatorship of the proletariat, or in a crony capitalist system by the banking oligarchy that knows this system is coming to its end? So they're seemingly desperate presently. Do you have any thoughts on this, Oliver?
I think one way of looking at, the sort of the dialectic between capitalism and socialism is the same leitmotif that I was referring to earlier, the problem, reaction, solution. So historically, if you look at what was called laissez-faire capitalism in let's say Victorian England, or the Gilded Age in the United States, yes, there was tremendous economic freedom in principle and in theory. People had all sorts of rights, and the government was small and it didn't interfere so much. But those societies were not socially stable because you had, terrible things: exploitation, child labor, extreme poverty, which resulted from people being thrown off of the land and denied access to the commons. So they had to move to the cities and work in factories and so on and so forth. And socialism then arose in the 19th century through Marx and others as a type of reaction to the problems that occurred under an unfettered capitalism. And what you end up with basically is some sort of synthesis where the present economy, whether it's in Canada or the United States, doesn't matter, or any other country, it's a mixed economy with both capitalist and socialist elements. The capitalist elements, as they function, tend to concentrate wealth and power in the hands of a few private individuals, and the socialist elements concentrate power and purchasing power as well in the hands of a public body, the government, the state, etc. So if you're not part of the oligarchy, you belong, you're a common citizen, you're getting squeezed by both sides. It is outrageous really how it works, because I'll give a concrete example. Tax Freedom Day in Canada comes something like middle of June, so it's almost half the year working for the government. When you look at all the different taxes that you've got to pay, in the United States it comes middle of April, which is it's obviously a little bit better, but still you're looking at almost 4 months of the year, a third of the year working for the government. When you have taxation so high, you are, of course, depressing people's purchasing power. And this then, what does it do? It pushes people into the hands of the banks, which are private. So now you've got, you don't have enough money to pay your bills because the government has taken so much. So now you've got to go to the bank and apply for a loan for the car or to study or for the house or whatever it is. And you will be paying that loan back over so many years, and depending on what the interest rate is and how long you have the loan, the total you pay back may be 2, 3, or 4 times what you borrowed. And of course, the money that was lent to you is created as accounting entries. They're not lending you somebody else's money. We should do a whole show just on what money is and where it comes from, money creation. But then you see the money that's being siphoned off in that direction is concentrating wealth in private hands. So you're squeezed. It's like Scylla and Charybdis, the Greek mythology. You're stuck between these two dangers, and that's why we're never going to have. Well, I shouldn't say this, but this is why they've kept us between the two poles, because you can get maximum extraction if you have this capitalist dimension that's centralizing power, and you've got the socialist dimension that is also centralizing power.
Yeah, it's like the perpetual synthesis that exploits people. And I say, like, we're less citizens of nations presently in this stage of capitalism, and we're more akin to indentured employees of transnational corporations. Like, our culture isn't it doesn't matter. It's like we're interchangeable economic units. You see that with the mass migration. Also, the Canadians aren't having replacement levels of babies anymore. So I mean, we're just going to have to obviously bring people in to keep the Ponzi scheme going. Essentially, it's a snake eating its own tail, and we're towards the end of the meal. So with that said, we're about 46 minutes in. We have close to 200 people watching. I will appeal once again to get you to please share the stream. It's very helpful for us. And I just want to let you guys know, if you have any questions, put them in the comments and we will be getting to them. We don't have a ton of questions, so we're going to continue the conversation until the 1 hour point, and then we'll get to the questions and we will go through them. So please put any questions you have in there. And with that said, Andre, do you have anything to add?
Well, maybe just one thing. We know you were talking about Tucker Carlson, and when somebody arrives and say to try to associate Christianity with socialism, like I was saying a little bit earlier, do they bring any fact? Do they bring any proof, or it's just an opinion based on nothing? And when you look at what is happening actually, money and a lot of money brings power. And with power, you bring tyrant. So we are arriving at the level actually where they want to suppress not only free speech, but critical thinking, because you have to comply or die. It's not that you don't have any choice, whether it is socialism or capitalism, or like you say, John Paul, neo-feudalism. You don't have the choice. Either you comply or you die. You're rewarded, or I'm not even sure you're rewarded if you took the shot in 2021. But they force people into a narrative, and just to prove it, how it is completely ludicrous. The climate change completely disappeared within 24 hours and was replaced by data center. And now the MOU in Alberta with the pipeline, and suddenly people are starting to talk about superpower with the need of energy. Brookfield is talking about thermonuclear power plant, small power plant, and suddenly everybody's talking about energy, accumulating a monstrous amount of data. And for what purpose? Because the tiny group at the top is crushing everybody, and it doesn't work. So you arrive at a point where the system will just collapse. We can refer to the Great Depression, 1929, 2029, just in time for the Agenda 230 of the United Nations and the World Economic Forum. The plan is working. Where are the warriors who will fight? Maybe that's why we try to appeal to people. At least look at the doctrine of Douglas rationally, and we are presenting those small clips that are very well made, very simple, 5-6 minutes. You go through the 42 clip and you will understand where you stand. Maybe you will not understand the entire system, but at least you will understand that you're a slave and you're not a free person.
A good point to make presently would be that the left had some merit in their diagnosis of society. Like, there is immense wealth inequity. There's poverty in an age of plenty. These are big problems. Where they go wrong, in my estimation, is in their prognosis. It's not about equalizing, you know what I mean? It's about making a system in the Douglas doctrine that reflects reality. and therefore serves humanity, as opposed to these capitalist theories that the market is special and we should all serve the market. And there's inherent flaws, but we have to tolerate them if we want freedom. And this is a lot of the fallacy of this that a lot of people are locked in. I frequently think of Milton Friedman with his famous speech about the pencil. And he's kind of making a case for globalization, essentially. But like, he doesn't say that this is kind of predicated on a supranational structure having the monopoly on credit. Like, that's what this is predicated on. So, I mean, you keep your pencil, Mr. Friedman. I mean, it's not worth it. And you don't, and I really liked that school of thought. That was kind of where I was leaning. That made sense to me. Thomas Sowell too. I'm definitely a student of Thomas Sowell. And it's not that I've dismissed all of their wisdom. It's kind of, I separated the wheat from the chaff. But yeah, with that said, it's like that's why I think this moment in history is ready for Douglas social credit. This was very popular 100 years ago. Everyone was talking about it. It was very much considered, and there was political parties, but it was considered, like, a lot of people thought that this was an antidote to socialism or communism taking over. So, I mean, it's definitely interesting that presently the left and the right, I mean, they should be getting behind this. Like, from us, if you're someone who's a socialist, you can't deny that Douglas social credit addresses most of the core causational aspects of the problems. It just does it in a different way that you want to. It's not, we could still have industrious people that have a little more. They could have a lot more if they want to work hard, but everyone kind of gets taken care of. It enfranchises the citizen. And then the people on the right, they should get behind this because they don't want to be subjugated. Even libertarians should get behind this system. This gives them almost everything that they want. You've got some good arguments speaking to that, Oliver. Would you like to mention them?
Yeah. So one thing that people on the conventional right should consider is that, under the existing system, for reasons of social stability, and because there is a gap, we're all taxed, and people who make more money end up in higher tax brackets, and they're sort of subsidizing the lives, the existence of other people who are less fortunate. Under Douglas social credit, because everyone's getting a national dividend, whether they're a millionaire or a pauper, and they're all benefiting from discounted prices, those who are better off are no longer being taxed to pay the welfare or the unemployment payments for those who are less fortunate. So just for that reason alone, it's like, am I going to be taxed less in Douglas social credit? Yes, a heck of a lot less. And because we can provide for all those people without engaging in the level of redistribution that we presently engage in. And so, would they prefer that, or would they prefer the existing system? It's not realistic to think, oh, well, we'll just lower tax, massively. We'll get rid of welfare. We'll get rid of unemployment insurance, and everything will be just fine. That doesn't occur, and it's not going to occur because it would induce too much instability in society. You would have people rioting for food and so on and so forth. I mean, this is what happens in a lot of third world countries. And it would ricochet back. It would affect the middle class and the upper class in ways that you can't always predict. So there's a way of making everyone richer without making anyone poorer, except perhaps a certain class of people who currently are profiting from the fact that there is a gap, and are using the inherent scarcity of money as leverage to propel themselves to the top of the social pyramid.
Yeah, they deserve to lose a little bit, I think, to say it mildly. So with that said, we're going to enter the question and answer period of the show. So if anyone has any questions, please leave a comment and we will get to it. So we will start with a comment from Bob Lior. No servant can serve two masters. You cannot serve God and mammon. Now the Pharisees, who were covetous, heard all these things, and they derided him. So the animated video, Bob made that comment before we even started the broadcast, I believe. And the animated video kind of illustrated that a little bit. Do you have any thoughts, Oliver?
Yeah, well, it's there is a certain line of Christian theology which has not perhaps been as developed as it should be. But there is this sort of thread going through the whole gospel, this thread of the money question. It would appear that the money question is one of the things that got Christ crucified, because he went into the temple on Palm Sunday and he overthrew the money changers, and was basically saying that money should not displace God. Money should not displace truth. Money should not displace morality or the natural law. And because he was threatening their interests, the interests of a certain group of people, in terms of wealth and power, they were then strongly motivated to get rid of him, because what would happen if this message spread? It would put an end to the scam that they were running. And of course, Judas was induced to betray Christ again for 30 pieces of silver. So there's this subtle sort of monetary thread that actually weaves its way through the gospel, which I don't think has received enough attention. But that battle is one that we are still fighting 2,000 years later.
And do you have anything to add regarding this, Andre?
Well, I didn't know the Mossad existed when Christ was crucified. 2,000 years and still fighting, good against evil. I say it is a spiritual war, and the consequence of this is the monopoly of money. And when you have money today, I think Michael Jones always referred to truth is the will of the powerful. The more you have money, the more you have power. You, me, and Oliver, we cannot have the success of Tucker Carlson. So we cannot reach to many people, because money will suppress the contradiction, the critical thinking. That's what we try to do. You cannot serve two masters.
Yeah, I just want to add, in order to give people hope, that when I say that this battle has been going on for 2,000 years, it's not the case at all that mammon has always been in the ascendancy. There have been times and places, believe it or not, in various societies where the money system was designed more in line with natural law, and it functioned better. And a good book to read on that is Ellen Brown's A Web of Debt. Right? There's also Stephen Zarlenga's The Lost Science of Money. So it's not the case that, they've always been in control, they always will be controlled, there's nothing we can do. No, there actually have been times and places, even within Canadian history, relatively speaking, where the system was operating more in line with the common interest. Right? So what we are trying to do is to bring the system now further into conformity with what the natural law requires, so that it functions better.
Very good. So we have one from Payman Ascari in lay terms. So Dr. Heydorn, this is specifically to you, Oliver. Would it be somewhat accurate to say that Keynesianism, National Socialism, economic Nazism, and Douglas social credit are different approaches of inflating the money supply? I already know your answer, but I'm curious to see what you're going to say.
There are different ways of injecting additional money into the system. We have to be careful, when you talk about inflating the money supply, because as Douglas social credit understands the financial system and the economy, the measures that Douglas proposed, while it does represent a debt-free injection of purchasing power in lieu of the existing palliatives. So instead of all the debt palliatives we currently rely on, it's designed to not just be not inflationary, it's designed to be anti-inflationary, right? So when it comes to Keynesianism, Keynesianism basically fills the gap with government deficit spending. And it is inflationary because debt money is inflationary, right? If you fill the gap with debt, that debt has to be serviced in subsequent periods. So what ends up happening is, as time goes on, consumer incomes, some of what we earn gets channeled into debt repayment, whether that's your own personal consumer debt or the debt of enterprises or government servicing charges through taxation. And then what happens, of course, is we're not able to maintain the standard of living because we've lost some of the income for all this debt servicing. And the only way that the economy can survive then is to try to inflate the debt away. So people demand wage and salary increases from their employers. Those wage and salary increases eventually filter into the market as increased prices because the greater amounts that are being spent to pay people factor as a cost, an increase in costs. And as time goes on, that's why the dollar has lost so much of its value in any country that fills the gap with debt money. But we're talking about filling the gap with debt-free credit, and only in sufficient amounts to bridge the gap, not to overshoot it. We actually should do a whole show just on the inflation issue. But it's interesting too that Keynes was present when Douglas gave evidence before the British Macmillan Committee in 1930. And Douglas had been invited, because this is the midst of the Great Depression, people are looking for answers. So Douglas had been invited to explain his analysis and his proposals. Keynes was present, and Keynes was asking him all sorts of questions. And we still have the transcript, so you can read the discussion. And it certainly seems that Keynesianism was a way of addressing the problem that Douglas had identified, this recurring gap, but addressing it in a way that would not reform the debt money system, and in a way that would maintain and indeed intensify the centralization of power and the centralization of wealth, which the debt system affords to the owners of the system. So Keynesianism was basically introduced to take the wind out of the sails of Douglas social credit and maintain power in the hands of the credit monopoly. As far as National Socialism is concerned, as I understand it, this was very largely along the same lines, that you would have the government maybe create its own money, not go to private bankers for the money, and spend it on all sorts of projects, build the Autobahn or rearm the country for war. And that provided employment, and it provided more purchasing power. So, conditions in Germany had improved dramatically after Hitler took power and, up until the war. But there's a huge philosophical and policy difference. Hitler had no intention of giving the Germans a national dividend, right? He didn't want people to have that kind of independence and freedom. He wanted the leverage that the private banking system uses to serve his objectives, to serve the objectives of the Third Reich, the National Socialist state. So in social credit circles, we say that Hitler and the Nazis shared the same basic philosophy as, let's say, the Keynesians, that the group is more important than the individual. And they shared the same basic policy, the centralization of power. we will give you money, but only if you work under direction, only if you do what we think you need to do to get your meal tickets. And so they actually had more in common than that might first meet the eye. Whereas Douglas social credit is about decentralizing power and distributing power and making the financial system self-liquidating in a way that is not inflationary.
So it's interesting. He actually had a small follow-up there under a different account, Piascari, but also Hamiltonian economics. So the way you describe National Socialism, it seems very similar in some regards to a Hamiltonian economic model. What people are referring to now, like Promethean Action Group, as an American system, or Matthew Arrett, he wrote books about this. Is that accurate, Dr. Oliver, for me to compare the two?
I think Payman should be relieved to know that if God forbid, for the sake of argument, we sort of reintroduce a conventional spectrum here, in terms of personal liberty and the size of government, Douglas social credit, to speak in conventional terms, is to the right of something like Keynesianism or Hamiltonian economics.
That's a good point. So, Oliver, did you have any insight to share regarding Payman's question?
I think we had this question before, no?
Yeah, no, I was asking Andre because I didn't give Andre.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No worries.
Well, just one short comment. Associating Keynesianism, National Socialism, and Douglas social credit, it's not quite honest in a way, because read the book Social Credit Economic. Read about the doctrine, and then maybe you can try to distinguish Keynesianism, sorry for the pronunciation, and I will go even further, fascism, because fascism is based on compliance to the group. You can study fascism and Mussolini, how corporate fascism always control all the means of production, and either you reward companies that will comply, or you punish companies that will not comply. So we cannot associate Douglas social credit in any way with those systems. It's like this system is passing right through the middle of the political spectrum, saying, wait a second, we don't want to be governed by oligarch or by a small group of people who pretend that they are better than us. This is individual freedom, but you also have duty that comes with individual freedom. And this is why maybe the dividend will fluctuate in time. You receive dividend because you have your share of the common good. But if you're not producing nothing, you receive nothing. So I think it's, like I say, maybe I will quote Michael Jones, stop scrolling and start reading.
I would add as well that perhaps, let's just throw this out there as a hypothesis, perhaps you only have a political spectrum or an economic spectrum when all the systems on the menu deviate from the natural law. When you have a system that is designed carefully, precisely to embody the natural law, what the natural law would demand of a fully functional financial and economic system, then you end up with an economic model, a financial model that transcends the conventional spectra entirely and lies above and beyond them. Because when you bring things into conformity with natural law, you have unity. Truth is unifying. What if it works well? That's the end of the debate, right? It's kind of like having different theories about how we should build a plane. Well, the theory that is right is the one that results in a plane that actually flies well. So that's how we know that all these systems in the conventional spectra are imperfect, partially incorrect, etc. They fall short, they miss the mark of the natural law because they don't have the optimal stability that you would anticipate from a fully functional system.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So since Payman just got you a little heated there, Andre, he wanted to add some criticism of your tie as well. Apparently your pattern is causing him seizures. And furthermore, to keep it going, he says, read the whole book, Andre. That sounds like a lot of work. So ever the Joker payment in the comments. Do you have anything to add to that, Andre?
Well, he can watch cartoon if he if he doesn't have the time. It doesn't take a lot of brain. He's a doctor in neuroscience. I hope he can at least watch a small clip.
It's a good time for me to segue into once again that short video, the animated series. It's an amazing resource to understand this system and to understand the flaws in our current system. So, I mean, I'm going to bring this up briefly. This is where to find it. So if actually you want to find this, if they're all together on YouTube, just put Douglas Social Credit into the search bar and it'll bring you, that's the first thing that comes up is this animated series. So it's an excellent resource if you're curious and you want to learn more about this economic system, which for me has been transformative, even in the way I conceptualize our issues now. It's truly something to behold. It really is. So with that said, we will get to another question here. So this is a comment from Bob. The Australian League of Rights, the ALOR, produces a ton of content on social credit. Their monthly journal, the New Times Survey, is a must-read. So this is a good time to mention the Pilgrims of St. Michael that have the Michael Journal that goes out. Is that a monthly publication, Andre?
No, it's published, I think, 3 times per year or 4 times per year. You know, April, May, July, August, and September.
Quarterly.
Yes, exactly. In French and in English, in Polish and Spanish.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of people that understand the merit of this system, but for some reason it's been memory hold. And that's like I mentioned this earlier. I believe firmly too, or I wouldn't be dedicating all my time to it. I think there would be millions of social creditors if they were aware of it.
That's my Bible.
And there's the Michael Journal there. That's from the Pilgrims of St. Michael out of Rougemont, Quebec.
Very, very good article in this magazine.
Yes, yeah, just this information. It's such it's so refreshing. The whole system. It's like me, I'm new to it still. And I just find it's almost, I'm enthusiastic about sharing this with people because I want them, it answered so many of my questions that I was personally struggling with. And I was stagnated in my thinking on this. And it was, again, I'll use the term transformative for me. So I would appeal to everyone, please check this theorem out. It's really special. And with that said, I will appeal to, we got about 250 watching, which is really good for a live audience. If you guys can share this stream, it's very advantageous for us in getting this message out to people.
You can even share it with CSIS.
Yeah, share it with CSIS. Absolutely. We'll be all in the gulag for misinformation at Melanie Jolie's behest.
Oh boy.
So we have
she can still run.
Yeah, we have a comment from Bob Lior, and he's watching on the YouTube channel. Now, my YouTube channel, Dumb the Wiser, it doesn't have a lot of followers. I'm very deboosted on every platform except for X. So the 250 people we have watching, the vast majority of them are watching through X. It's not a problem that what hosts the most viewers, Bob. It's more a problem with being deboosted. I don't think the algorithms favor this type of nuance. It's not sensational. And I wonder if this topic is not, they've written something hard. They coded it into the algorithms. Like if you mention Douglas social credit or monetary reform, bury that, because it's odd how little views we get compared to my following. I have 30,000 followers. I used to get a couple of thousand viewers on things, always. And now it's that bad. So I think that's the biggest problem behind it. So let me see here. So it's mostly Bob in the comments. O'Duffy argued that Sisyphism was the basis of nearly all the thinking done on economics, making work, always elevated over distributing the product. Now, that's far beyond my sphere of knowledge, so I'll hand that right over to you, Doctor.
So he's talking about the Greek myth of Sisyphus, right? He had to push the rock up to the top of the hill, and then it would roll down again, and then next day he'd have to push it up, and then it would roll down again. And if you look at the system that we've got, where you have to fill the gap with debt, and we've got an axiom of full employment. There's so much waste and sabotage in the system, and it takes so many different forms that Douglas referred to this as a tragedy of human effort. In order to make the financial system work, we have to do a lot more work and a lot of types of work which are actually not necessary inherently in the nature of things. So that there's a tremendous amount of entropy in the system, and this causes dissatisfaction, this causes dysfunction, this causes friction. Right? So it always makes me laugh. They don't hear it quite as much now, oddly, I suppose, with automation and AI. But politicians, they used to talk about, you vote for us because we'll create jobs, as if it's the purpose of the government, firstly, to create jobs. Hillary Clinton was big for that. She said, don't vote for the Republicans, vote for the Democrats because we'll create jobs. We need jobs under the existing system to distribute income. We don't need jobs to produce what we need to survive and flourish. We're perfectly capable of producing everything we need with fewer and fewer people actually working. But the system says we can't distribute income through something like a national dividend. So people have to go into debt. And if you go into debt, you have to be able to pay off the debt. So you have to find a job to pay off the debt. And maybe you end up doing some kind of work that you're not interested in and that actually doesn't elevate the general welfare to any great extent whatsoever. Right. So it's colossal, the damage that it does and the waste and the sabotage, it's colossal. And it takes so many forms that it could probably just do a show on economic sabotage.
We got all kinds of ideas for future shows.
Mm.
Do you have any insight to add to that comment from Bob, Andre?
Well, Sisyphus, yes, of course, the myth of Sisyphus, he was punished. And of course, after that, he had to roll his boulder. Albert Camus wrote a book, The Myth of Sisyphus, and he's explaining how it affects human nature to be forced to work for nothing, because you don't work because you love your job, or you don't work because you're flourishing and you're evolving. No, you work because you need an income. Most people, and I'm sorry to say this, but maybe it is 75-80% of the population works for nothing, meaning that they don't have to do this. But like Oliver said, the job are created to deliver income, not to help people evolve. We were talking, I think it was last week, about beauty and about time to meditate and enjoy life with the concept of leisure, meaning that you have the time to read, you have the time to invent things. We need inventors, people, brain. Of those people, they all have a brain, but it seems to me that they don't have the user's manual to use it, and they're stuck in this dogma that, like I always say, I will infuriate all economists, but it does not exist, the science of economy, because it has to be based on fact, and they don't base this on fact; they base this on ideology. That's why we are pushing the boulder over and over again.
Yes, it's definitely a good analogy, and we've seen this in socialist economies too. Like, I read a lot about this recently in Michael Malice's book, The White Pill, and he was talking about the Soviet system and how there were a lot of redundant jobs. Like, you would see people just watching a parking lot, and that was the premise, is they were contributing in their way essentially, and it is redundant. And again,
Well, It was not only in in Soviet Union, but in April I went to pick up my wife at the Montreal airport, and there were about 10 people in the parking with flashlight and says, oh, there's a gate, and you pay with your credit card, and they are there, 10 people around every corner. You had to stop. You had somebody with a flashlight. They said, what is it? It is, they are distributing income for a useless job.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Sovietization of Canada.
Yeah, and it's funny. We're seeing the same symptom arise in the late stages of this capitalist structure. And again, you were right, Oliver, in clarifying it is more of a mixed economy presently, even in America, which is heralded as land of the free, the capitalist free market. It's still very much a mixed economy, and it's reliant very much on taxation.
I wanted to mention something which is really, really curious. You've got these right-wing think tanks in the United States, libertarian think tanks like the Heritage Foundation or the Cato Institute. And every year they do rankings of all the world's countries in terms of the level of economic freedom. And if you take the Heritage Foundation, for example, if you look at their rankings for 2025, 2024, 2020, you go back, let's say, a decade. According to them, this is an American right-wing think tank. Brace yourselves. Canada is economically freer, according to them, than the United States. So,
that's interesting.
You can look at you can question their methodology. How are they coming to this? But that's what they say. And there's the sort of the benefit of the antagonist. I'm not saying it's true, but it's the benefit of the antagonistic witness, right? They're right wing. They want more economic freedom. They put Singapore and New Zealand at the top, but nevertheless, Canada ranks higher. It's like Canada's, I think, 16th. United States is 25th. So you look at that and you're like, what's going on there?
Yeah, that's odd. I would definitely have to have a look at the methodology for sure. But it's interesting, and the broader point being is that it is still a mixed economy regardless. So it's like you were saying, it's kind of socialism and Marxism being a reaction to some of the problems with the early implementation of capitalism, and then there's kind of, it wasn't quite a synthesis, but it's now in this spot where it's a mixed economy and it's barely being held together. They're constantly having to influx revenue into this, debt-based revenue, in order to just keep the whole ship afloat. And it's to the point now where the Ponzi scheme, I've been saying this frequently, like, we're the generation that is going to have to clean up this mess. And if we don't clean it up, and if we can't get the message out, we're going to be locked in some kind of socialist hellscape. That's what's coming, because that's the play of the elite class. If they can get people infantilized on a UBI is not a national dividend. A UBI comes with a lot of leverage from the state. They can take this from you at any point. They can utilize this in order to get you to go along with any form of vaccination or anything they want. Essentially, they control everything at that stage, and that's the way they're trying to push us. So if we don't come up and bring it up from the grassroots with a reasonable trajectory for people to go and to understand that we can have a better system, then we're doomed. So this is definitely a good time for me to appeal to the audience one more time. We derive the vast majority of our views long after the live broadcast. So if you could share this, it's very, very helpful for us. So with that said, we've got another follow-up from Bob regarding the O'Duffy. Also denounce procuse, I can't even say that word. I'll let you guys read it. The practice of those who would solve human difficulties by adapting man to his institutions instead of adapting his institutions to the needs of man.
Yeah. So
well, Procustes,
Procustes. Go ahead, Andre.
Procustes. Well, Procustes, he was, he was inviting people in his house, and they were going to sleep in a bed, but the bed was short. So to make sure that they fit in the bed, he was cutting their feet. So, and the fact that you adapt the person to the system. You have to comply or die, like I was saying earlier.
They say if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So I'm never in the wrong room with you, gentlemen. That's certainly for sure. Do you have any comments on this, Oliver?
one of the basic ideas in social credit is that, you know, the group organization, institutions, they're there to serve the common citizens. They're there to serve individuals. We do not exist, or we ought not to be seen as existing for the sake of the survival or the glorification of any institution, right? So institutions, you can basically evaluate how well they are, how healthy they are, by how well do they serve the individual citizens or the individual members of the association. If they're not serving people effectively, efficiently, fairly, then something's wrong.
And something's definitely wrong. That's where we are presently, and that's what I was saying about the Douglas social credit theory. Is it's actually excuse me, I lost myself for a moment there. It's actually it's a system that serves humanity, as opposed to this free market that we all have to, you know, adhere to in order to ensure what they call freedom. And the only way you could call the capitalist structure presently as freedom is to contrast it with socialism. That's the only way you could even make an argument, because presently we're essentially indentured servants, we're debt-ridden wage slaves, and our culture is degenerate too because of the immorality, which is kind of the theme of this this episode. But with that said, I'll throw it over to you, Andre. Do you have any parting words for our audience?
Watch the clip, stop scrolling, start reading books, and start to learn a little bit about not acting in a Manichaean way, socialism versus capitalism. Try to understand, I would say, the characteristic of socialism, the characteristic of capitalism, and try to see why both systems do not work. They just don't work. And for the left, okay, I understand that you want more social justice. I agree with you. But socialism is not the solution. For the right, capitalism, freedom of the person, I do agree with you. But the system does not work. The free market, it's like I say all the time, they have one hand in your pocket. And they take that money because they create scarcity. And after that, they force you to comply. So watch the clip. They're very interesting.
And Oliver, do you have any parting thoughts?
I would just encourage people again to take the time, invest the time to take a serious look at what C.H. Douglas was saying and what's the original social credit, which of course has nothing in common whatsoever with the Chinese CCP/globalist counterfeit and inversion. Take the time to see what it's all about, because once you understand what Douglas was driving at, you can't look at the world the same way. You know, so it revolutionizes your interpretation, your view of everything, and that's liberating when you see that the way you've been thinking about things has been constrained in artificial boxes for the benefit of certain groups of people.
Yes, that's the biggest takeaway from me, and I'm only 3 months into studying this theory. It revolutionized the way I look at our societal problems, and it's getting to the point where I'm repetitive. I do a daily news program with Payman Ascari, and I'm just always, I have to stop myself because I want to correlate it to Douglas social credit, every single thing I have to say, just because I'm enthusiastic about it, because it changed the way that I've been diagnosing the problems. So with that said, it is good. Please go to YouTube, look up those animated videos. Douglas social credit is the first thing that comes up, and watch a few each day. There is a bit of a commitment to learning the theorem. It's not super complicated. I learned it. I'm not that smart. You could very easily learn this, and it's very much worthwhile. And I will appeal to everyone one last time to please share the stream. We do this every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern, and we'll see you guys next week. Cheers.
Cheers.